Hey folks, it's Dave Neal, and we have an update on Donald Trump and his $10 billion lawsuit he just filed against Rupert Murdock. His old pal, Rupert Murdock, who owns Fox News, helped Trump get into office by creating a business model built on playing to people's fears. Culture war issues. How can we divide the working class and then rob them, essentially? And we ate into that. Our generation, our parents' generation, went from news where you turn the TV on at 6 p.m., you got the news for 30 minutes, and then you tuned in the next day. That world is dead. We live in a 24-hour news cycle. Fox, and don't worry, MSNBC and other media conglomerates have also been guilty of this sort of, if it bleeds, it leads mentality. Well, now Trump is suing, not the Wall Street Journal per se, but Rupert Murdoch for $10 billion with a B dollars. President Trump sued Rupert Murdoch for libel after his Wall Street Journal published an article saying Trump sent Jeffrey Epstein a bawdy letter for Epstein's 50th birthday. The Journal reported that the letter, sent in 2003, was among documents included in evidence assembled by federal criminal investigators as part of their probe of Epstein. Trump and Epstein had been friends, fell out years before Epstein was arrested on these different charges back in 2019. Now, why is this interesting? To be quite honest, we don't learn much new from this letter. We already knew Trump and Epstein were friends. I'm going to play a clip for you guys of Epstein's ex-girlfriend saying, oh yeah, they were like two peas in a pod. They had a falling out over real estate stuff. When you're a billionaire, you have falling outs when you fight over which mansion you're going to buy. And that's what ruined their relationship. But there's a lot of interesting stuff going on because, listen, we have Trump who has railed on culture war issues. He tries to divide people. He says the other side's trying to cancel him when we know Trump is the king of cancel culture. If you go against Trump or his movement, they cancel you, right? They are trying to cancel people over Superman, right? Can you believe a world where Superman's going to get canceled? The Man of Steel? They said, oh, it'd be a shame if nobody shows up to the box office because Superman's too woke. He ended up being making hundreds of millions of dollars. Superman did at last week's box office. But Chris Hayes' response to Stephen Colbert's Late Show being canceled. Not really an overstatement to say that the test of a free society is whether or not comedians can make fun of the country's leader on TV without repercussions. And folks will say, oh no, Colbert, he's a hack comedian. The dude was the highest ranked, late night talk show host. What are you talking about? Whether you liked him or not, the show was successful. He makes fun of Trump. Trump finds a piece of leverage, which was, will he approve this merger that Paramount is trying to do with Skydance, whatever the company, this billion-dollar merger. And then just knowing that Trump could get in the way, imagine Trump says, get rid of Colbert and I sign this thing through. That's exactly the world we're living in. You sound crazy to discuss it this way, but this is it. A fascist takeover of our government. I've had people say, Dave, I don't listen to your channel anymore. You're too Trump deranged. If this isn't the thing to get deranged over, then what? My channel does not exist if I can be rounded up off the streets for some sort of threat to society, right? Trump's already talked about deporting Rosie O'Donnell. How insane is that? Like, at what point does it trigger people enough to speak out? So the fact that Stephen Colbert got fired, a fellow comedian who's got a hell of a lot more power than I do, at what point can Trump get into the levers at Google or TikTok or Instagram or Facebook and say, you know what? Here's a good example, right? Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, Meta, Instagram, he owns it all, right? Well, what if Trump wants to say, you know what? I kind of feel like I'm going to have to shut your company down for monopoly reasons, whatnot. And he says, you know what? Backdoor deal. I'll keep you guys up, but anyone who mentions me in a negative light, demonetize them. And then my livelihood goes away. And then I have to bow down to Supreme Leader. It sounds crazy, but this is the world we're living in. Here's a piece of good news, even though it's a ridiculous story. Andre Hernandez Romero, the innocent makeup artist imprisoned without trial for 4 months in El Salvador by the Trump administration, is free. He was wrongfully accused of being a gang member because of his mom and dad tattoos and illegally sent to El Salvador without due process. So folks that might say, well, I guess the system works out because they got him out of jail. No way, hombre. That's not how due process works. You get the trial before they send you to prison, let alone another country. So he's actually been returned to the country he was fleeing. And honestly, let's just hope he's okay. There was a reason he fled that country. Will he, fear for his safety? I honestly don't know, but at least he's out of prison for now. So this is a indicator that, and by the way, if this happens one time, this should be career ending. This should be career ending. Who else is in this prison wrongfully? There are dozens of stories that we don't even know of people that don't have the platform to speak of things like this. So it's not far-fetched to talk about this as absolute insanity. Trump sues ABC, Disney. Trump sues Paramount. Trump sues the pollster in Iowa. He's not suing because he needs the money because they've actually defamed him. He's suing as punishment for people that have done things he disagrees with. And it is so sad that the state of our world is, put it this way, I believe newspapers have the integrity to fight these lawsuits, but they're owned by parent companies that don't want to deal with it. Now imagine if Trump wanted to sue Washington Post. They're going to want to defend themselves. But does Jeff Bezos want to get into a lawsuit? Now Jeff Bezos owns Washington Post. You understand, this is the problem when all of the power is sort of centralized to a few billionaires, is Trump's backdoor dealings with them could lead the billionaires to say, here's $16 million. I don't even want to deal with it. Let's settle it. And then Trump says, well, I'm winning all these lawsuits against these organizations. They're absolutely ridiculous. So now Trump suing Wall Street Journal. What will Rupert Murdoch do? Will he bend the knee? My guess is, and my hope is, no. Wall Street Journal would not have run this story if they didn't completely vet it. They knew they were going to get sued before the story came out. Trump called them and said, if you run this story, I'm going to sue you. Now, if this thing actually goes to court, they have a great chance of winning. Trump's not going to win a defamation lawsuit. He's going to have to prove actual malice. Did they publish a fake article and did they know it was fake? The letter, that is. Now, the letter's probably real. And I say that because the other people that wrote these letters, these bawdy letters for Epstein's 50th birthday, they haven't claimed that these letters are fake. And you have Alan Dershowitz and Lex, whatever the guy is, the owner of Victoria's Secret, this billionaire, who, by the way, he might be incriminated more than anybody in this thing. He had signed himself over power of attorney to Epstein back in the day and done unheard of business deals with somebody. Very bizarre stuff. What did Epstein have on him? And if the owner of Victoria's Secret, and if, the richest man in Ohio, if he needs to get thrown out with the bathwater, so be it. Let these dudes, honestly, let them pay the price for whatever crimes they committed. And the fact that none of this has been brought up, Trump's like Doe 175 or whatever his name is in these documents. How many Does are there? How many John Does were a part of illegal activity? And we don't have those answers. And Trump's base, this Frankenstein monster he created, is not going away. He created and inflamed this conspiracy-minded group that's not going to take his answer at face value, because it's very obvious to them that he's lying to their face. He's dribbling information a little bit at a time. Epstein victims say the Trump administration's handling of the case adds to their anguish. And by the way, this argument that, well, we don't want to trigger the victims, so we're not going to discuss this any further. BS. That's absolute ridiculous. The victims want justice. Here's Epstein's ex-girlfriend discussing the relationship that Epstein and Trump had together. Have a listen to this.
Best friends. I dated Jeffrey for a period of more or less, I think about 4 or 5 months. And the only friend that he would mention every time we saw each other or had a phone conversation was Donald. And he would share a lot of anecdotes. I have plenty of anecdotes. And yeah, they were very close and they were up to no good.
Up to no good. All right, hey, listen, is that going to hold up in court, this sort of third party? No, absolutely not. But I think as we kind of go through all of this info, I think what's important for people to know is you don't have to agree with everything I say. You'd be insane if you did, right? But we are on the precipice of a movement that understands Trump is bad news. Even Joe Rogan is getting it. He's been interviewing a hell of a lot more progressive-minded people. And again, if I can give anyone any homework over the weekend, a great conversation with James Tallarico. James Tallarico is a public servant. He's in Texas, I think the House of Representatives, and he goes viral all the time for speaking about how Christian nationalism, this idea that we're doing the Lord's work, is what's ripping apart our country. And he speaks as somebody who's a practicing Christian who understands why we need separation of church versus state and why these bad actors are pretending they're doing all of this sort of work they're doing in the government on behalf of Christian values, which is absolutely not true. And now I bring this up because Joe Rogan's the biggest podcaster in the world. He says people like James Tallarico, a Democrat, a progressive from Texas, should be the types of people who are running for office. Now, the number one question people asked when they saw this interview was, yeah, but does he take money from AIPAC, which is a lobby group that based in Israel that is kind of donates to members of both sides of Congress? And the answer is no. There are very few congressmen that aren't bought and paid for by a lot of these groups. Now, I wanted to share this because a broken clock's right twice a day. Folks are perplexed, flummoxed maybe, that they're agreeing with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Hold on, I know, that came out of my mouth. Marjorie Taylor Greene made an amendment to cut $500 million in a missile defense aid to Israel. The amendment died 422-6. She pointed out we already provide them with billions of dollars, racking up debt as they give their people subsidized tuition in universal health care. Now look, I agree on this one. We are giving so much money to countries that have it better off than we do. Ukraine is a separate story because they've been invaded by Russia and they're 1,000% under attack. And I'm not saying Israel's not under attack. I'm just saying if their country's doing so well that they can provide so much for their people, they don't need this much help from us, a country that is trillions and trillions of dollars in debt.
Israel bombed a Catholic church in Gaza, and that an entire population is being wiped out as they continue their aggressive war in Gaza. My amendment would strike $500 million in funding for nuclear-armed Israel's missile defense system. The U.S. already provides Israel with $3.8 billion annually in foreign aid. $3.8 billion, that's a lot of money. Additionally, the April 2024 security supplemental included $8.7 billion for Israel. Even though Israel, nuclear-armed Israel, has universal health care.
So there it is, folks. Now, it's a weird time to be alive when we have populists on the right making similar arguments with progressives on the left. I say unite over these common issues that we agree on, which is let's spend more money funding our own universal health care. Trump said he had a health care plan something like a decade ago. And now he says he's got concepts of a plan. The fact that Kamala Harris couldn't punch Trump, metaphorically, in the jugular over and over and over again about healthcare goes to show that the Democratic Party hasn't provided a solution to combat the lies being presented by Trump. Now, there are members in the Democratic Party that do. People like James Tallarico and other progressives like Ro Khanna, Bernie Sanders, AOC. They have a solution, which is let's tax the rich. Let's tax them their fair share. I'm not talking about taking all of their wealth and redistributing it. I'm just saying if they pay their fair share, it funds the bridges, the potholes, the lead pipes that are poisoning people outside of Detroit, all of the different issues. So we can get sirens to alert people when there's flooding in Texas. Let's fix our problems. We don't do this by suing journalists. And by the way, Trump sued Ann Seltzer, the pollster from Iowa. The lawsuit was dropped in federal court. He's refiling it in state court, but he's unafraid to use the weapons and the bullying tactics that he has. But what he should be afraid of is the power of the people. The people are coming together. There is plenty of MAGA that are understanding if Trump's lying about Epstein, what else is he lying about? And I'm okay watering those plants, the plants that we can agree on, that we need Medicare for all, that we need to stop funding new wars and foreign militaries that have it better off than we do. Let's come together on what we agree on and understand that unless they want to rig the system, redraw the districts in different states so that they can hold on to their power, unless they want to play dirty like that, the people are going to be speaking in droves this coming election that this is not what they signed up for. Just rounding up people that are here legally. Literally, they just found a minor in this alligator Alcatraz and a person under 18. There are American citizens that are getting rounded up with ICE's Gestapo. This is not what people signed up for. So will Trump's lawsuit for $10 billion against the Wall Street Journal go through? I say, if I'm Wall Street Journal, if I'm Rupert Murdoch, bring it the F on. Because Fox News, Rupert Murdoch, these companies are going to be around a lot longer than Trump. And what they need to start thinking about is, what are we going to do with the future of our country? Once Trump's gone, where does this MAGA movement go? If we really want to direct it into making America great, we need to realize Trump's presented sort of a faulty plan of like getting rid of fraud, but continuing to rack up trillions in debt. And we need to realize that a solution needs to emerge. And the Democratic Party, at least the leaders they've presented, have really just wanted to put Band-Aids onto that solution. I'm all for systemic change and taxing the ultra wealthy to make that happen. And I think just about everybody that I speak to agrees with that, right? Now, there'll be people that are afraid that say, oh, we don't want to live in a society where we redistribute everything or communism. That's not what I'm talking about. I made an Instagram video yesterday. You can check it out, D Niels, I think, on Instagram and TikTok, where I compared democratic socialism to the NFL. Now, hold on tight. In the NFL, 30 teams. If you win the Super Bowl, the next year you get the worst draft pick, which is to say you're such a good team. You knocked it out of the park. You got the hardware. You are the best. You're raking it in merchandise, World Series banners. Great. You are now at the back of the line for the emerging talent. What this does is the worst team, the team that sucked for whatever reason, they had injuries, their coach is incompetent, for whatever reason, they were terrible. They get the first round pick. They get the future star. That's going to help them stay competitive. The NFL realizes that all 30 teams, if competitive, put together a better product on the field, which leads to more interest from fans, and it's a hell of a lot more interesting than the same 4 teams being in the playoffs every season. So the NFL understands that a little socialism, a little breaking off from the wealthy and giving to the poor keeps society moving. And why have a whole middle class, a whole working class that can't afford to pay money into the economy and buy things? That's called a recession when that happens. We don't want that. So this idea that people want to make, and they'll make it in the comment section, where they say, we don't want communism, and it sounds like if you tax the rich, that's going to be redistributing the wealth. That's like saying when you win the Super Bowl, every player on your team goes to the bad teams. That's not what we're talking about whatsoever. Just having your foot on the gas of justice, just a little bit, to say, you know what, those ultra wealthy, they don't need the third yacht. We can break off, and they do it. They're doing a tax write-off now for up to $10 million on private jets. How tone deaf are they? And they don't think we're going to rise up and have a goddamn revolution over this. Let's prove them, the power of the working class. Let's prove them that we actually want to live in a world where I'm not just rich and all of my friends are poor, but we all have a fighting shot. So this idea of progressivism, this idea of democratic socialism, it's not about everybody getting handouts. It's about everybody feeling like they have a shot to win the Super Bowl. Everybody feeling like if they get up and go to work, they have a shot for success. They have a shot for buying a home one day and getting their kids through college. People don't want to be given everything in life. They just want a shot. And we're not getting that right now. And the people are going to realize it one at a time. They're going to come together, and there's going to be a solution, and it's going to be a metaphorical bloodbath. And I don't think Trump stands a chance. And if the Republicans, if they all want to hitch their wagon to this dictator, this fascist, then so be it. But if they hitch themselves to that wagon, they're never going to win another election, because that wagon is increasing the debt, taking people off of their own health care. It's just effing people so fucking hard. And I don't think folks are going to stand for that. And I think they're going to realize in the age of technology that they're getting hosed. Let me know what you guys think. Share it with a friend. And everyone have a good weekend.